we're going on to our inspirational hour, and we're going to listen to a very lovely woman speak. We heard her briefly. Her name is Mrs. Ini Onuk. She was also on the cover of Gem. She's the CEO of Thistle Praxis. I hope I got that right. When I saw her, or when I read about her in gemWOMAN, you know, I finished reading the story, and then I went back to look at the cover picture, and then I looked at her. And I remembered all the places I had seen her. Then I look again, and none of those scars, none of those stories are her. Can we please put our hands together as we invite Mrs. Ini Onuk?
Okay, I think I got into Sister Visa's issue, but that's not what I want to talk about. I'm just here to inspire you. And I'm going to start by telling you a story. For some of you who've heard me speak, I'm sure you've maybe heard the story. For some of you who've read my first book, maybe you have. But I have very short time, so I'm just going to jump through. I am the daughter of a watch repairer, a roadside watch repairer. We were so poor that when you started talking about Guy, and I heard the comments, you know, around the room, there are people that can be so hungry, I laughed. And I laughed because some of us are doing just that. We have housemates that we treat like housemates. If your children come out and your housemate come out, then you don't need to tell somebody who the housemate is. They will know. We used to live in one-room apartments, 6 children. My father sometimes go out, no food, he repairs watches. So there are days, maybe 15 naira, 20 naira, and that was a lot of money. A lot of money. If I tell you my age, then you will understand. A lot of money. And that one might be one a day for the rest of the week. So when it comes to hunger, I understand what hunger is. When you say someone is hungry and they steal, I know it personally. If you have ever been thrown out of a one-room apartment in the rain, I'm sure we see it for people who have maybe moved around the high-density area. You see people with their fan and their mattress on the street in the rain. I have lived that life. We lived in a market, Alabarago market. We lived in a market for 6 years in my father's small shop. And one day fire entered the market in the middle of the night. And people were running helter-skelter. The one they could carry, they carried. Of course, we didn't have plenty. So we were running up and down. And I was 11 years old. I didn't know who God was. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't understand relationship with God. But I made a vow at 11 that I will work so hard and I will never be poor. Because I saw poverty. And so when it comes to food, giving people food, it means nothing to me. Because I understand hunger. When it comes to showing love, not lip service love, I know what it is because I didn't have it. And so, limitations is about what we put on ourselves. Many of us have even used the things God has blessed us with as limitations. My father could not, I was the senior prefect girl in secondary school. My father could not pay 75 naira for my final exams. We were just 40 students and they are registered 39, and the principal was wondering, who is the remaining person? And they said our senior prefect girl, and the school paid for me. I couldn't go to school until I got married. And that was the beginning of my problems as well, because I insisted every other thing, I have to go to school. That was the limitation that was placed on me, but I said I wasn't going to allow that limitation. So if it's any kind of degree, I have it. You can read my CV, I have it. If it's school, I went to school. And that is to say that the things we desire in our lives, God has given us the opportunity to do them. But what are you using to limit yourself? Many of us give all sorts of excuses. God blesses you with children. The children become limitations. You can't do anything. Oh, my children. Come for midweek service. Oh, my children. Come for visitation. Oh, my children. In fact, your office, they know that you have children because you are the only one God has blessed with children. I need us to think. I just wrote down a few things, and I'm just going to run through them. I said, and I'm just going to pick them from some of the things I've heard. When Sister Busy was talking, somebody gave an experience and said, the lady has come back to Nigeria, she's not doing anything, she's really suffering. Ladies, please understand this, you can do anything. I moved to Addis Ababa, I left my job, I was working in the bank. And that was in 1998, 99, 2000. I left the bank and I moved to Addis because my children were small, and my husband had moved to Addis Ababa as a diplomat. And I moved. When I got to Addis, I found out that as a diplomat's wife, you were dependent. You were to be a full-time housewife. So I could not work. With all my school, I couldn't do anything. It was enough for me to sit down, attend diplomatic dinners, dress nicely. But I knew I was going to be limiting myself. And that's how I found out that they don't eat cow skin in Ethiopia. They throw it away. I went and looked for where they did cow skin. I didn't even know how to do pomo. I called people in Nigeria and said, please, how do they do pomo? I will go, collect the cow skin, make pomo, and sell to the African communities. I went to learn how to sew, so as I can cut and sew as it is. I made cakes. I started baking. I did everything. I started cooking food. So I will come to Nigeria, buy food stuff, take it back. When Africans have parties, I will do the cooking and I'll get the money. I was doing everything. And then there was an opening in the African Union. There was a Nigerian lady. And I went to her and I said, I heard there's an opening. I wouldn't mind working as a consultant. And she said, okay, we'll look at it. And then she turned to another lady and said in Yoruba, she didn't know I speak Yoruba. She said, she won't jello man say, come my son jello. And I stood there and I walked back to her and I said to her, but you know that I'm cooking doesn't mean I don't have an education. And she was surprised. But then that was another limitation, something to put me down. Many of us are allowing the friends we keep, the relationships we keep, the competition we want to compete with people. Oh, she's carrying Z10. Oh, she carried a Prada bag. Oh, she did this. That is what our limitations are. And so we begin to copy our lives against things that other people are doing and not on the path that God has created for us. What is your own path? Number one thing, you need to know yourself. Who are you? If as a woman you don't know yourself, then marriage will define you. Your children will define you. Your friends will define you. The car they drive will define you. The place they live will define you. When people see me and say, oh, you live in VGC, I said, unfortunately, people like me, we can't afford VGC. I live in Bagada. And they laugh. It's because you don't want to. Because we have turned it into a definition thing. So where you live is now a status symbol. The car you drive is now a status symbol. I've driven the same car for 5 years. And everybody keeps saying, change this car. I had an accident recently. And that's the only reason why I'm changing the car. Because a car is not an asset. The minute you drive it out of the store, it begins to depreciate. So please don't kill that man insisting, Sister BC is driving a Range Rover. I want an Evo. You don't need it. Because most of us would rather drive that Range Rover and be slapped blue-black just to keep that image. I know what keeping image is. I kept it for 23 years. And I lied through my teeth all the time. So when I come out looking very nice, Uncle Toju, thank God. what a lot of us are doing. But on that day, I want you to remember that every lie that we tell, we will answer for it. Because our God is a God of purpose. He called each one of us for a purpose. He didn't call you to be married and then end your purpose. Marriage is just on the path to fulfilling purpose. Number 2, establish that life is inherent with limits. There will always be things that are ready to limit you. I started up a company 3 years ago. It's called Face Praxis Consulting. It took me a while to be able to leave my job and start up a business. And for the first 2 years of that business, I understood what hell would be like. There was no help from anywhere. Tunji knows. He knows from the very beginning. No help from everywhere. We went everywhere for help. I wrote proposals I have not written in my entire life. Because I believe that in some sense that God has blessed me with some intelligence. So I tried. But help was not coming from anywhere. We did a huge conference that cost over 60 million naira. I spent every saving I have had in my life just to establish something. It was as if I was doing the wrong thing for 2 years. For 2 years, our audit books recorded minus 300% loss. And the auditor said to me, "Madam, you can't have this again. Because if we're to rate it internationally, you are not a going concern. You are just there. What kind of business? Minus 300. But I stand here to testify that if you limit yourself, you will be limited all round. So I want you to think, what is limiting you? What are those things that you're doing? Maybe it's in your business and you're not seeing a way forward. Many of us are doing 10, 20 things at the same time and not committed to anyone. If Bola can be committed to this, and I know you have your stories as well, about being committed to what you're doing, gemWOMAN, maybe sometimes not getting enough adverts to keep it running, but you have been committed to it. And you can only see the results of what you are committed to. And if you don't limit yourself. The next thing I want to say, that limits are simply tests. They're just tests to see how far you can go. What is your staying power? A lot of people that have made it in business or in their lives are people who are not willing to give up. And so your husband takes the kids, push you back to Nigeria. You should not give up. That is when you should stand up on the table and say, I am going to get my life back. And you will get that life back in such a way that the man himself, you know, there's something to you. I'm more a Yoruba woman than a Calabar woman. You know something, they say, woman for Kobenyo. Abi? He will be used to beg you. And you will decide. I don't think you meet up to the standard anymore. Praise the Lord. I know that even as Christian women, sometimes we live, and I was just saying to Bola on the table, I just wrote my second book. And everything you were saying, my sister, it's what is in Break the Alabaster. The title is Break the Alabaster. And it's more of my experiences about women. I have been in a church where I have seen women torn to shreds. When I mean torn to shreds, I mean torn to shreds. One of them, we are still nursing her back to health. She has psychosis. If you come to my parish tomorrow, on Sunday, I will show you the woman. This is not a story. All because she wants to keep the home. She has psychosis, so she's well for 2 days and she's not all right for 3 days because she begins to say things that nobody understands. Please do not limit yourself. God is a faithful God. If you are willing, he says, step out in faith. If you're willing to step out and say, Father, this is not what you desire for me. I have prayed enough for this man to change, and he's not changing. He's limiting my greatness. I need you to intervene. Most of us are so afraid to pray certain prayers. We are afraid, and that's also one of the limits, because you need to understand that there are tests, and how you pass that test and how you go through it, it's one of the things that will make you or break you. The next thing I said, limits are not really limits, but seeming limits. Sometimes things present themselves in such a way that they are just, you can't break through. You're doing business, maybe you're not getting, the business is not going on well, and you've done everything, but it doesn't seem to be breaking through. Maybe there are certain things you are not looking at. Some of us have very troubling children that we are hiding from a lot of people. Our children may be doing drugs. Our children may be problem children. But then, because, like my sister said, we want to keep this appearance, this facade that, it's not only my own that is bad. I cannot be telling everybody my own story. So we keep this facade. There's a family, my kids, I keep using this word kids. They're not kids, they're children. My children have been in Canada since 2005. And so at least we know the ropes around Canada. My eldest daughter finished in university there. There's a young family that have always said, oh, they wanted us to help them get their son to Canada. This boy schooled in Bells, in Abeokuta. So the man isn't educated, the wife isn't educated, but he works so hard to want that his children will have what he didn't have. And so he spends so much putting them in school. Now this family knew that from the final year of this boy, he started using marijuana. They knew, and they didn't tell me. So we did all, and I said, he's 16 years old, he's going to Canada, he will stay with my children, at least for 1 year, instead of staying in the residence, where he will mix up with all sorts of children and will not be able to control him. This boy gets into Canada, of course, it's free. Everybody goes to work, everybody goes to school, you're supposed to go to school. And he started mixing up with the bad gangs. It was recently that I found out that the parents knew that he was using marijuana. They didn't tell anybody, they were hiding it and hoping that he would change. Unfortunately, he has gotten to Canada now. He started using this marijuana again with all these bad boys in a country like Canada. Now the school authorities are involved. And my son has been very quiet, wanted to see how he could manage him because he's a boy, he's much older than him. But at a point where he couldn't manage him again because the boys that he was with broke into the house and stole the television so they could buy more drugs. Many of us have children like that. But we are limiting ourselves when we don't seek help for these children. When we hide behind the cloak of, not be my own bad pass. So you hide it. At the end of the day, they will steal from you. They will do all sorts of things. I want to end, and I can take questions, because I wrote quite a lot of things, but I don't want to go on. Everybody has a story. It is only when we see each other and we rub powder and we dress nicely and we come out, we think that some people, especially those who live in those very beautiful mansions, that they don't have problems. Their problems are worse. The Bible says, better a loaf of bread with water than a table spread with all sorts and no peace. I just want to also end by saying that whatever you're going through, you are not the first person. If your husband is beating you, please don't hide it. My friend that I told you, she's alive and well. In fact, what made me very happy, because, I always say, and I don't know, pastors, forgive me. I think I'm a pastor too. but forgive me, that when we get to heaven, the discussion will not be what we are thinking it will be. Because the Bible says that our God cannot be understood by men. He is not what we think he is. She left with one eye. He blind. That was the only time she had to open up to everybody that he has been punching my eye. But now she left with one eye. So what's the point? Like I told her, I said, what's the point? You should stay and marry him with one eye. So some of us will hide it. There is another sister in church that the husband used to beat. He beat her, she lost 2 pregnancies. And we were busy in the prayer band, praying for the fruit of the womb. So please, let's not deceive ourselves. This is reality. Some of us, you are not beating, no. But the things they tell you, your father is a poor man. If I didn't marry you, you will never see an aeroplane in your entire life. Your entire village, they have never entered a car before. It's because I brought you to Lagos. You can now wear yellow and wear black. And we endure it. And our children are seeing it. And our children are taking it. Most of us are bringing up boys who don't know how to do anything. Most of us are bringing up boys who are disrespectful to their sisters. And we say, oh, he's a boy. Boys don't enter kitchen. I have a son that I have brought up, and he treats women like eggs. He knows I will slap him blue black if he talks to any of his sisters anyhow, because we must change what we don't like. So please, bring up your daughters properly. For the men, I always say, validate your daughters. Let them know that there is something good about being treated well. It is okay for you to say no to certain things. It is okay for a man to treat you properly. When you validate your daughters, you teach them that another man should treat them well. But if you as a father talk down your daughters, you make them as second-class citizens. They think that they are second-class citizens. When you bring up your sons as mothers, you don't teach your sons how to talk. They cannot boil water. You are not helping the next generation of men and women. God bless you.